Hello everybody and welcome to our character creation for Floating Fortress. Today I am with Jamie, also known as PotatoMcWhiskey, and we're going to make a character. How you doing, Jamie?
I am doing fantastic, and I'm really excited to make a character because it's been a while since we've made a character. So I'm interested to see what you've cooked up for me today.
Well, it's going to be good. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the land, a little bit about the campaign setting, and then we're going to hop into character creation and stat rolls and everything. So if you are in Roll20 and you can see our map, this is a rough, ultra rough version. The island is not a perfect circle. The lake in the middle of the island is not a perfect circle, but there's a lake in the middle, and the island is like roughly, it's not like a really long and skinny. It's more of like a block or a round. We're still building it out.
Yeah, for sure. Imagine that the coast was a little bit more squiggly, right?
Right. We'll get you a full version later. It is still in development.
I really like it. I don't know, it makes me
you.
think of like a Pokeball or something. It's got that kind of something symmetrical about it.
Cool. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, this island was a site. Let's try that again. Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, this island was the site of the greatest fortress in all the world, the mighty floating fortress of the Farron Empire. Legend has it that the great Archmage himself built this fortress and used it to define the breadth and reach of his control. When finally satisfied with the extent of his domain, Ferris parked his fortress until need for it arose once again. Your village of Annara was established by decree of the Great Wizard to guard the entrance to this great fortress, and it has done so for 3 millennia. In that time, much has happened and much has been lost. The secrets of the fortress were handed down from commander to commander in an oral tradition designed to prevent their theft and the fortress's misuse. Long after the Great Mage vanished and the Empire crumbled, Annara kept its secrets, guarded the mighty keep, and ritually passed this eternal responsibility through the generations. At the start of the last Great Age, however, when the skies erupted and the seas invaded the lands, the last great commander was swept out into the lake and never seen from again. The line of secrets was broken. The lands beyond the lake were sown with salt, famine, war, and strife erupted across Ferodia, which is the big island. Annara was not spared this difficult time, yet the responsibilities to the world were not forgotten. Centuries came and went. Commanders became overseers, kings became mayors, valorants became wardens, and archmages became armators. The ruins of the fortress on Annara stud the land and remind the peaceful villagers of a time long ago when this small island was the center of all power in the world. These days, the roles and positions are still held in esteem, but it has been 1,000 years since any significant event has occurred. Wizards, clerics, and adventurers of all sorts still come to Annara in hopes of unlocking the secrets of the past. The attitude of welcome but watch has helped curtail these would-be power seekers. When the bannerless army arrived during the start of what would become known as the Veil War, a cleric with an escort of ogres and giants arrived to conquer the island of Annara and retake the fortress. But after a day of looking around and looting the place, they left, never to be seen from again. There is much ado about the Veil War in the rest of Ferodia, but Annara was left in peace. Whereas once the role of the fortress and defenders of Annara was to protect the floating fortress of Ferris so that it would only be used by the great Archmage, now the role is more to make sure the secrets of the past stay buried by those who would bring harm to the world. And that is our introduction. And you here are on this little tiny island in the middle of this lake. Your island and your village / town are both called Annara because it's the only thing around. So anyone outside if they say they're going to Annara, they mean the island, and for you it's just home. Around you is a bigger island known as Ferodia. The largest city on Ferodia is over here. It's called Justar's Bay. There's a pretty mountainous region over here that has a medium-sized city called Terrador. There's a desert over here with Ruskala being part of it, and sort of a predominantly grasslands. I'm oversimplifying all of these regions, but predominantly grasslanded area called the Huss, whose major city is Hussein. And the lake you're in is Fiscat Lake, and it has 4 rivers that exit from it, which is really unusual. If you know anything about lakes in the real world, they almost always have 1 river that leads out of them. Occasionally, you'll see a lake with 2 rivers that fork out, but that's pretty rare. This is a lake with 4 rivers that exit it and flow into the sea, and there's no clear source of water that dumps into the lake. More of like the lake bubbles up from beneath and then flows out in different areas, which makes it bizarre. But also, like, this is a fantasy land. One of the previous campaigns we had like a giant whirlpool at the center of a series of islands with an eternal storm rolling over it. So, like, it's definitely weird, but it fits within the scape of weirdness that happens in the world.
Speaking of the giant swirling islands, wasn't this the same empire? That was part of the Farron Empire, too.
That was part of the Farron Empire way back in the day, yes. And that set of islands is just off to the left. Well, not just off to the left, but off to the left a little bit. And the campaign that we just played was off to the right a little bit. This island is actually situated right in between those 2 land masses, the large continent of Solemn and the Dardanelles. So we're the only major thing in between them.
I wonder if this island was artificially made by great magical power. The gods are tight-lipped on that.
Well, our campaign is going to involve the floating fortress. That's why it's named Floating Fortress. So maybe we'll get some answers to these questions by the end.
All right.
In the village, there are a bunch of people, usually descendants from the older guardians who have been watching this place for a while, but there are 4 major roles. And I know I'm dumping a lot at you and asking you to pay a lot of attention, but I'm going to just walk you through these 4 major roles because they're important, especially for you.
I'm scooping up those rolls into my brain.
Excellent. There once was upon a time a king. That role has now become the mayor, the leader of the village and the protector of the lands. The responsibilities include maintaining diplomatic relations and intelligence gathering to prevent an invading force from attempting to seize the fortress. That's back when it was a king. And this position used to reside in Detria, but it was reestablished as mayor and brought over to Annara when the skies erupted and the seas invaded the lands, and cohesive contact was lost with the rest of Ferodia, and just kind of they stopped engaging. So instead of being all over the bigger island and having the king over here and then the actual guardians right here in this village, everything just kind of contracted into the village, and the village became much smaller. Once upon a time, there was a commander. That role is now called the Overseer. When the village was a fortress, the commander oversaw its defenses, its maintenance, and the protection of its secrets. At the start of the Last Age, the commander was lost, and the fortifications were damaged beyond repair. With no help from the rest of Ferodia, the new commander cannibalized the fortress's remains to build a town, and turned swords and armor into plows, and used the cataclysmic event to sort of rebrand the fortress defenders into like a quiet village, helping to like bury the secrets rather than defend them because he doesn't know what the secrets are. This plan of defense through secrecy has lasted ever since. The term commander was changed to overseer when they brought the mayor on board because he's not really commanding anything now. The overseer works with guardians to patrol the lands, keep an eye out for clues of the past, and deal with those who still seek legends of the fortress. The next position is Valorant, which eventually became Defender, which eventually became Warden. This role was once for brave knights, warriors, and clerics and wizards who had proven their mettle and wished to enter the next phase of their life. This position of Valorant was recognition of their honor and service so that these great people might serve out the rest of their days in an important role that still gives them an opportunity to like raise families and enjoy their golden years. When the Farron Empire fell apart, the title of Valorant was lost its meaning, and the position was inherited through the generations rather than like given to epic warriors. It became Defenders, and then Defenders became the preferential term until the skies erupted and the seas invaded the lands, which is, the phrase for this terrible cataclysmic event. And there was a lot of lightning that blasted the entire countryside, and the ground shook, and the seas, like, big tidal waves crashed on Ferodia. But you're on a little island inside of Ferodia, so you didn't get salt water lapping up onto your shores. You just got fresh water. And so your island was more or less fine, whereas other places ended up sitting under seawater for a long time, and their earth was salted with sown with salt, and they became problematic. Anyway, defenders are now overseers. The defenders are now wardens, and they work for the overseer. It's a part-time job. It's like a one weekend, or 1 day a week, 1 weekend a month sort of thing.
Like a National Guard almost kind of thing. It's like a part-time soldier.
Yeah, it's not even soldier anymore. It's more like we don't need to defend this land because no one ever attacks it. So we just walk around the island and make sure that there's no spies, or there's nothing happening around here. Like, is someone trying to get at the fortress? We're just going to walk around and just, do a quick patrol once a week, once a month, just to make sure everything's on the up and up. Symbolically, there are 12 wardens at any given time, 3 for each realm. And the last role is used to be Archmage, and now it's called Armator. They're an advisor, counselor, wiseman, and diviner all rolled up into one. The commander and the Archmage were keepers of the secrets, but different kinds of secrets. Whereas the commander knew the secrets of the keep, the Archmage knew the secrets of the keys. The last Archmage died in the middle of the last age, and his body was interred on a nearby hill. But this site was looted during the Age of Iron, and the body was stolen. That's the last interesting thing that's happened here, and that happened 1,000 years ago. The position of Armator is now... Go ahead.
What was the keys? Is this like a reference to literal keys?
Well, they talk about the keys, and it's debated whether it's like a physical key or like a magic ring that you have to wear, or maybe it's a password. All of these great secrets have been lost over the past 3,000 years. So, the keys, it's up to you to kind of interpret that.
Okay, interesting.
And the position of Armator is now typically held by an elder half-elf who remembers the most about this place, like someone who's just been around for a long time. And currently there is a half-elf who's 240 years old who serves as wiseman, who serves as Armator. I'm just kind of hey, oh yeah, this thing you're asking about? Well, 200 years ago, someone did something similar, and this is how it worked out.
When I was a wee lad, we wore an onion on our belt.
Right. So this is the area into which we will be making our character. If you have any questions or want any information, you can always ask at any time, but I'm happy to answer any you have right now.
So I think it would be more interesting to discover more about this world by living in it. Mm-hmm. So in your mind, what is the next step for us, from a gameplay point of view? Where do we go?
The next step is we're going to roll stats. You're going to open your character sheet. We're going to roll some stats. We're going to maybe build out a bit of a character. Then I'm going to tell you what your position in town is after you've made the first part of your character. And then if you want to change anything to make that fit, then we'll do that. And then once your character is fully fleshed out, we'll take a short break, and then we'll run a short RP session to kind of get into their skin a little bit.
Okay, yeah, because I'm thinking okay, we can roll stats, but I was thinking okay, who's my dad? You know what I mean? Who are my parents? Who are my friends? Did I have friends?
Do you want to start with that?
Did I go to school? Let's do stats. Stats are fun.
Okay. So to roll stats, we're going to do it a little bit differently from last time. We're going to be rolling 3d6 twice for each stat. So you will roll 3d6, and then you roll a second 3d6, and then you can pick which one you want. I might butt in if your stats are too high or too low and help adjust them to make more reasonable characters, because we're trying to play as relatively ordinary folk who are
an average Joe.
Going to change. Yeah. I'm happy for variation, but no 18s in strength sort of thing.
Okay, let's I'll type in strength, okay? I hope strength is one of those words that for some reason I have a hard time typing. It's because of the GTH. And then I will roll 3d6. Is that what you said, correct?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. There's 3d6, that's a 7. Woo! And a 14.
And a 14.
14's good.
14's great. Yeah, let's take it.
All right. I'm taking that 14 for strength.
Next is Dex.
14 doesn't get me melee attack adjusted, does it? You need 15
It doesn't.
for that.
You would need 16 for that in second edition.
In 16.
You would need 16, and then you get a +1 to damage. At 17, you have a +1 to hit and a 1 to damage.
Damn. Okay, so 14 is pretty strong, actually.
Yeah.
So this will do dexterity. Roll 3d6. That's a 10. 10's good. 11. I will take an 11.
Excellent. Next up is Constitution. And we're only doing 6 stats here. We're not doing perception.
Yeah. Have you modified the system?
Well, originally the system doesn't have perception. That was the modification, and it's been so long that I've been playing with it. I want to try it again without it to see if perception was actually a good idea, or if I added extra things that don't actually make a difference in the game.
Okay. Okay, so 3d6 for con. 8's acceptable. A 12 is great.
12 was fantastic. Love it. All right. Next is Int. That intelligence.
So this will be Int. 3d6. 14. 14's great.
Love it.
And a 10. I will take the 14 for 500,
Perfect.
Alex.
Wisdom, sir. Wisdom.
Wisdom or willpower.
Right? Whichever one you want to call it. They're the same.
12 versus 6. I will. Ooh. I'll take that 12.
And a charisma.
And then charisma. Are you actually typing? I don't see any your text coming up. Are you actually typing? Are you doing hidden
I'm waiting
DM
until
stuff?
all the stats are done, and then I'm going to dump it for you.
Okay. Roll 3d6, a 10, and a 5. Okay, I'll take a 10.
All right. There are your stats: 14, 11, 12, 14, 12, 10. Love it. These are great.
This is an above average character, right? Because what's the exact average?
10.5.
Boom. I'm slightly above average. Slightly above average. It's not bad.
Next up is to pick your race. Now, available for us to play are humans and half-elves in this area.
Talk to me a bit about the consequences of being a half-elf. Like,
Yeah.
being a human is like, oh, you're a human. And it might be like, oh, he's a funny guy from the Stormlands, or he's from Arcadia. He's got a funny voice. Oh, he's got a weird accent. But no one's going to be like, oh, one of those darn humans, unless they're an orc, right? But a half-elf, that might have some consequences, right?
Yeah, well, half-elves, visually take after their human parent a little bit more than their elven parent. They tend to be slightly shorter than humans, with a smaller, lighter build. Typically, males are around 5.5 feet tall. Females are about 5 feet tall. They do have usually kind of adjusted elfin style ears, not like proper full pointy elves, but just a little bit more of a taper. But if they wear their hair long or have a hat on or something, you could easily mistake them for just a shorter human.
Would half elves be on average slightly more fair, more beautiful than the average person? Would the standard of beauty be oh, look at that very handsome half elf? He's got a perfect
I think that
jaw.
might be more of a stereotype, because sometimes you do get a weird combination of features where maybe they get a shorter head from a human, but then wider eyes from their elven parent, and then you're that person just kind of looks a little off. But you get that stereotype of oh, the half elves are so pretty, but that's because the ones who don't look pretty, you probably you're just willing to not recognize that they're a half elf. You just think they're a weird, ugly human.
Yeah, I wonder if there's rumors at court, in some kingdoms, oh, have you seen new Lord Baltimore's the man he introduced? He's clearly a half elf. He's too handsome to be a human. That kind of
yeah. You probably get that
fun
stuff all around.
So.
Oh, they also live a long time. They live up to 280 years, 3 times human time span, and they take similar times to mature. So, a half elf gets to the maturity of an 18-year-old human around 20 or 21. So just a couple extra years added to the maturity cycle, but then boom, 3 times as long for a lifespan.
So it's not like a dog year situation. You're not a 51-year-old teenager,
No, but instead your 30s take 30 or 40 years to get through, and your 40s take 40 years to get through, and so forth and so on.
Okay. I kind of like the idea of playing a half elf. How many other half elves do we have?
One. Nick is a half elf. Mooten is a human. We haven't played with Jan yet.
Okay, I'm interested. So, are there any mechanical changes to half elves that are worth
Yes.
talking about?
They only get buffs. Humans are
Ooh.
the weakest race. They have absolutely no buffs whatsoever. Every other race gets buffs aside from humans. So let me talk you through them.
Let's do it.
I mean, except for the ones who walk slowly. That's a penalty, I guess. Half-elves have a 30% resistance to all sleep and charm spells. You do this before you make any saving throws. You just roll 30% chance to ignore the effects, and then you would make your normal saves after that for all sleep
Very
and
nice.
charm. You've got 60-foot infravision that lets you see in darkness. And, we're getting rid of the perception stats, so we're going to go back to some of the older rules. Half-elves... or secret or concealed doors are difficult to hide from half-elves just as they are from elves. Merely passing within 10 feet of a concealed door, which is a door hidden by obstructing curtains or whatever, gives the half-elven character a 1 in 6 chance of spotting it. If the character is actively seeking to discover hidden doors, not concealed, but doors that are designed to be hidden, then he has a 1 in 3 chance of spotting a secret door and a 1 in 2 chance of spotting a concealed door. So some mild buffs, infravision, sleep resistance, better perception. Yeah,
That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool, actually. I don't think it's going to come up very often, but it is really cool.
Yeah.
So what... well, I think maybe what will help inform my decision here is what classes are going to be available to me as a player, depending on what I pick.
We're not going to pick a class today.
Okay.
We're going to build a character who just lives in this town and is living their best life in this town. And then at the start of the campaign, there's going to be this event that kicks off the campaign that has a transformative experience on your life, and will also give you a character class, which you're not going to know ahead of time. And then, we will launch into the campaign from there. So we're going to build out what was this person before this crazy thing changed their life forever, sort of thing.
I'm in. Okay, so let's get started then. I'm going to say I've never got a chance to play half elf, so I'll play half elf.
Love it. Okay.
Perfect.
Now, next question's about your family here, because the island of Annara is predominantly human. There's this big elven forest over here. There are a few half-elves that live in Annara, and there's one elf who lives here. That is Greenzer, Nick's character's mother. Ended up moving to the island for a little while, and then the Banos army, the Empire of Verossi, sieged the elven forest while she was visiting the island, and now she just can't get home. So she's been chilling here for the last 50 years or so. Nick's character is, I want to say, 50 years old. 60 years old. I mean, he's also a half-elf, so he's been here a while. You could be a similarly aged, older half-elf. You could be a younger half-elf. It's pretty... usually, when you have a half-elf, it's a human woman who is with a elven father, and then she'll head home to raise her own child there, and the parents kind of stay separate. It's usually a love affair sort of thing. Elves typically don't like to marry with humans because an elf lives 1,000 years, and then you just have to sit and watch this person grow old and die before your eyes, and then your child grows up and grows old and dies before your eyes, and it's just really sad and painful. So it's discouraged. But when it does happen, it's usually oh, hey, human woman, well, you can have this child, but I'm out.
They're little flings or love affairs, or people who read too many romance books, getting ideas.
Back in Arcadia, there's actually a famous half elf. His name is Jean-Pierre Quisset, and he's a huge elf whore, essentially, who runs around knocking up human women, and because he likes it, he just likes to sleep around. But he's been around for 700 years or whatever, and so he's responsible for entire generations of half-elves because he just keeps visiting towns and villages and making sexy smoldery eyes at people, and he's basically mostly responsible for all the half-elves in Arcadia.
Now this is a dangerous moment for him, because what if he goes back to a town a couple hundred years later and he's like, "Hello, young lady," and it turns out that's one of his half-elf daughters. You know what I'm saying?
I think he just stays away from half elves. Are you a half elf? No. Okay. Hey, how's it going, sweetie?
Yeah, break glass in case of half-elf.
I did forget one thing. This is important to being a half elf. Half elves cannot bear children.
Okay.
You will never have children if you're a half elf. I don't know if that matters to you as a player about your character, but just as a heads up, because it's kind of an important part of their identity, is that they're the end of their line.
They'll never be. That makes a lot of sense as to Autumn's motivations. Do I want to be a half-elf? Ooh, that's a difficult decision. You're laying a lot on me right now. I think it'll be interesting to have a character who has that limitation. So yes, I will stay half-elf.
Excellent. All right. So, you're a half-elf.
Do I want to be like a really young half-elf, just on the cusp of maturity? Or do I want to be like... I feel like being an older half-elf, he would have already lived. Like if he was like, if I'm like 200, I would know so much, and I would have lived a life. I think it's more interesting if I'm a little younger, if I have a little bit more of a fertile potential. You know, like
yeah.
Not well, like obviously half-elves aren't fertile, but you know what I mean. Like there's more raw material there.
Yeah, you're on a journey of self-discovery and figuring out who you are and adjusting your position in the world. You don't want to be, having had this huge history that's inaccessible to you as a player because you haven't played through it, holding you back. I get you.
I like the idea of being like on the cusp of coming of age. What would be like the coming of age, I guess, in Annara?
It's just like 3 years later for half elves. In Annara, it's sort of that like 18 to 20-year-old, 16 to 20-year-old section is the like, depending on how fast you mature as a person, is usually it. And for half elves, it's a little bit later, so maybe 20 to 25 is your coming into your own.
Okay. How do you feel about me playing a teenager character? Okay,
that's not going to
already
work for
off
us.
the list.
Yeah. See, because the thing is that your role in our campaign is you're going to be the relatively new overseer. You're actually going to be the leader of the party because you're the overseer and the other players are all wardens here. So you can't be a teenager. You can be a young overseer who's just gotten the job like by accident, like maybe the previous overseer died or something like that, and like you've just inherited the role. If you want this like new overseer against more experienced warden vibe, or you could be like an older person who's had the job for a little while. We can really do anything.
Okay, that little bit of context helps me here. Okay, so we'll skip out on the teenage because I will have come of age. Let's say, boom, I like the idea of how do I become the warden? That's the real question.
The overseer?
Or sorry, how do I become the overseer?
That's usually an inherited title and job passed down from parent to child. Sometimes it skips a generation, and sometimes if there's no appropriate person to pass it down to, it gets passed to someone else. Like, if all your grandchildren fucking suck and you wouldn't trust any of them to be the overseer of the village, you might pass it off to someone else who's of the, the right caliber mind.
Okay. And so how specifically did it fall to me? Was like my father, was my mother the overseer, was my grandfather the overseer? Like that's where I'm like, how do I wake up one day and it's like, ladies and gentlemen, your new overseer, and I'm like, excuse me? That's right. Because that'll help inform me of like, I think I want my character to be somewhere between the age of like 25 and 30, which would be like a newly minted elf.
Yeah. So I think it will have been one of your grandparents who was the overseer if you want it to be a family inherited thing, or if you want your family to actually have been like a smaller, less important family in the community, then you could have been chosen particularly for this role. It depends on like which lineage you want to go to. Like, is your family long-standing important people, or are you just like kind of thrust into this position unexpectedly, or maybe not unexpectedly, but like it doesn't roll back through your generations.
I think it coming from one of my grandparents will be interesting because it provides an opportunity for me to both feel the weight of responsibility to live up to my family line, even though I cannot continue my family line.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. That's really good.
And also, it provides a thumbscrew for other characters to like if people don't like me, they can be like, "You're only overseer because your grandfather was."
Right.
Like, you didn't you're not good enough for this position, and you should step down. So I like that it gives hooks for conflict and hooks for character development. So I like that personally.
Perfect. Great. So why don't you roll me a D2? We'll see whether it was your grandmother or your grandfather. 1 for grandmother, 2 for grandfather.
Boom. 2.
It was your grandfather. All right. Grandfather was overseer. And it then got passed down to you. Let me just write down your stats over here. Excellent.
Also taking notes.
Perfect.
I'm hoping one day to input my notes into Vellum.
Ooh. Would you roll me a D10 for your handedness? 1 through 8 is right, 9 is left, 10 is ambidextrous.
Roll 1d10. Boom. There's a 4.
Right-handed. Excellent. And you said somewhere that 25 to 30 age?
Yeah. I'll roll a d6.
D6 plus 24. Let's go.
Yeah. 1d6 plus 24. 28.
Okay. Perfect. And you're male. And
should I
if
be
you want,
male? Should I be female? Should I be a lady? I don't think I've played a lady in our campaigns yet, have I?
No, you haven't.
Does it significantly influence roleplay in your experience to play?
No, I mean,
Does it make it more interesting?
It can make it more fun if you have fun with it, but if it becomes a burden for you, or you feel like you don't want to accidentally step on any landmines by playing into any stereotypes, then it can be a burden. So it's really what you get out of it. Nick is playing a non-binary, gender-neutral, androgynous half-elf character who's just sort of another space.
That's what I was thinking of doing. He stole my idea before I had the idea.
You could have 2 half-elves that are like that. That could just be the half-elf vibe around here.
I will play a lady. It's an opportunity to play a lady.
All right. All right. Let's get a height and weight for you. Female half-elves are
5 feet plus or minus 6 inches.
Yeah, so you could do 2d8 plus 51 inches. Is my general roll for it.
Roll.
Or you could pick a height if you want.
2d8 plus 50.
51. Plus 51. So that's 5'3".
5'3", okay.
Yeah, okay. And that's a pretty average height. They tend to be a little bit slimmer than human counterparts. So 110, 120, 100 pounds, whatever you want, somewhere in that ballpark, unless you want to play extra thin or extra heavy.
I will do 1d30 plus 90.
Excellent.
1d30 plus 90. Boom, 110 pounds.
Perfect. Excellent. And you can come up with it now or later, but do start thinking of a character name.
Well, let's talk about the culture of the area. So I would imagine because this was a sort of central hub of the Pharaoh Empire, there'd be a lot of family names and historical figures that would have been passed down. Sort of like the way in different religious communities in the real world. Like you have communities where people are named John, Josh, Paul, etc. if you're in a Christian country, or you might have Muhammad or something if you're in a Islamic country. Is there a cultural theme to the names in this area?
Let's see. Of the people we have named so far, have I naturally created a cultural trend? We have Cassia, Brommet, Cedric, and Riven are the named characters at this point in time. Oh, also Nick had a weird person, Ashen. So I think they are generally European based, unsurprisingly.
Shock.
I know.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Is there a elf names? What are like? Do elves have like? Is there a theme to how elves call each other? Is there sort of, because I would imagine elves would call each other stuff like, oh, this is winter, autumn, spring, summer. Like I would feel like because of their affinity to nature, they would be named after like.
They definitely have nature-oriented names when they translate them into the common tongue. For example, Greenzerg, Nick's character's half-elf on his mother's side. Her name was translates to Thornleaf, her last name. And so she is Ellis Thornleaf. Ellis is a weird name, but he picked it. And his name is Riven, and other half-elves have been named Autumn. So you'll definitely get a natural vibe. And you can kind of mix it. Like Thornleaf has a soft but also a prickly nature to kind of represent her character's backstory, like where her family might have been a little bit more of on the warrior side of things.
I'm Googling words for nature, like ice, like hoarfrost and weather. Zephyr. Zephyr's a good name.
Zephyr's a good name.
Dune, iceberg, jungle, lichen, lichen. Rainforest, ecosystem, dandelion, nature lovers. No, this is getting weird. I like the idea of Zephyr.
Okay.
Now that could be my first name or my last name.
I think, yeah, actually Zephyr works really well both ways. We could do.
I think Zephyr would be my first name because I'm a half elf, and then my last name would be a human name.
A human name? Oh, I like that. Okay, so Zephyr because you're a half elf, and then a human name would probably be based on your family. Your family comes from a line of overseers, and before that, probably commanders before that. Although the line got moved around a little bit, so. Your family position, the mayor's in charge. He's like the importer exporter on the island. The overseers, I think, would probably have ended up with a slightly religious role, sort of like the leader of ceremonies, helping to remind everyone of like, hey, this is why we're here. Remember, everyone, we're here. Like, we are the guardians of this hugely powerful magical item that like we can't even remember. So everyone remember, that's why we're all here. So some sort of like pretty strong leadership name I would go with.
Like in my mind, like a leader, the name of like a family of commanders, like, you know how like butcher is, maybe the name is like fishmonger or smith, right? Like your job became your family name. So I'm thinking like their name would maybe be something like stalwart or
right. Yeah. Something in that line.
Something like that would feel like if this has been a sort of unbroken, or at least somewhat unbroken, chain of descendants.
Yeah, something that projects power or authority or responsibility or leadership or like a spiritual bend.
But then maybe they would have changed their name to something mundane. Like maybe they had the name Secret Keeper, right?
Right.
But they were like, they don't want people to know that we knew those secrets, so we gotta drop that
tone
name.
it down, right?
And now we're Zephyr Johnson. You know, something maybe not that mundane, but something that would feel mundane in your world, but it's still interesting in a D&D sense.
Yeah. Let's see here.
I'm gonna do fantasynamegenerator.com. Let's see what we get. elf names.
We want like Mr. Mooton's character comes from the family who are the Smiths in town, and so his last name is Smith. So it might have to do with the job that you fulfill here. An overseer, like we might be some sort of shepherd. Like you could be Zephyr Shepherd or Zephyr.
Ooh, shepherd is a good one. Yeah, I like shepherd or sentinel.
Those are both
I like
good.
shepherd. I'm going to be Zephyr Shepherd.
Zephyr Shepherd. Perfect.
Because if people ask, I'll be like, oh, but, we were shepherds.
Great.
That's part of, like, keeping the secrets, right? I just so happen to be leader.
Right, but that means your family's probably also taken over the shepherding roles here. Now, you're on a small island, so in terms of livestock, like chickens and pigs are your primary meats. We could also toss in some goats or sheep if you want. There are cows on the island, but they're used predominantly for milk because, like, it's only a small island. You can't afford to, like, dedicate pasture land to cows for slaughter. So do you want to do goats, pigs, chickens, sheep? What do you want your family's primary? You'll do a bunch of stuff, but your primary livestock to be.
I think on an island like this, in my mind, I'm thinking it's chickens because chickens eat scraps, and this is a sort of we're surviving on the margins of society or the margins of land, right? This isn't bountiful land. We're scratching an existence. So to me, it feels like very chicken heavy, maybe a little bit of fishing, and also the idea of shepherd. Maybe there's like a little bit of a religious, spiritual connotation there as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, so your family has like a little farm. You do a little bit of crop raising for your own needs. You raise a bunch of chickens, maybe a couple other things, like maybe some pigs here. You probably got a dairy cow or two that you have because you're in an important position, so you probably have a surplus of supplies. You'll have a nice house, one of the nicer houses in the area, maybe the nicest home. Either yours or the mayor's home is the nicest. One of the 3 nicest houses in the city, in the town.
It would be like, oh, that's where the nobles live. That's the noble family. But like, it's not like we're living off the the fat of the land. We're not like an amazing.
You're still working for a living.
Everyone else.
Yeah, it's just all of this stone became available when the fortifications on the island were destroyed, when the skies erupted and the seas invaded the lands, and so the person who took over, the first overseer after that, looked around and was like, look, we can't rebuild these fortresses, these fortifications on this island. So, like, let's just reuse that stone to make houses. And then they had a nice house. And then that house has been handed down for 1,500 years. And so you might just be, like, scratching and living with chickens, but, like, you own a castle practically. Not a castle, but you own, like, a nice house because it's been in the family for 1,000 years.
Yeah,
because they're not making new land.
Tell stories.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about your family then. We know that your mother was a human.
Yep.
And your father was an elf.
Correct.
So I had told you a couple of how elves usually work, where it's usually elven father, human mother, love affair style story. Is that something that you want for yourself, or do you want to try another approach?
I'm having a little bit of a think about that. I like the idea that my mom wanted to have a half-elf child. She was like, listen, we need a half-elf to lead this family because, like, we humans don't live long enough to do it. And she's like, this is my duty to my family. I'm going to go find an elf and convince him to give me a half-elf child, right? It's sort of like she was a woman on a mission. So maybe it was like less romantic and more like, listen, like, we need this guy. We need this. We need a long-lived person.
Okay, so it sounds like your mother was pretty involved in the position, in the family overseer role, and her father was the overseer, and it was obviously going to skip her generation, and so she was like, in order to help contribute to society, to keep these secrets, we need to make sure the next overseer is also really good and maybe can hold these secrets for hundreds of years instead of our puny 40-year 80-year human lifespan. Yeah,
I figured it out. She was like, Father, I want to go get an elf to have a child with. And the father's like, absolutely not. And she's like, I'm going to do it anyway, but doesn't tell him, goes and does it. And then in the act of going and having a love affair with an elf and coming back with child, she gets sort of, fine, you will not inherit the overseer position. And she's like, that was my plan all along, idiot.
Oh, okay.
So she played my grandfather.
Okay.
By defying him, she got what she wanted. Which I feel like feels like a nice little story. How do you feel about that?
I like that. I like the responsibility of like, I think this is what we need. I like the grandfather being like, don't do that because I want you to also be happy. Like, I don't want you to be single for your entire life. Like, your child should have a father. You should have a partner. Don't do this. And I like your mom being like, screw you. I have a plan. I'm going to do it anyway. And then your grandfather being like, clearly you're not responsible for this. Your child can become overseer, but I'm not going to give it to you. I like all of that. Your mom being like, that was my plan all along. I could take or leave, but everything else I feel is super good.
Yeah, we could leave. She was like, listen, I did this for my family, and I don't care if you disagree with me. I think I did the right thing.
Yeah, like it.
Boom. She did what she thought was the right thing for the people of the island and her kin.
Okay, I'm just making notes on this so I don't forget later. And what would you like your mother's name to be?
I think she should have a fairly standard human name. So maybe she would be like, I don't know, is there a flower that's popular on the island? Like maybe she's named after a flower. Maybe she's named after a god. Like maybe she's called Martha.
Martha's great. It's a very common female name. Fantastic. Poppies, golden poppies are the most common flower on the island. But there are others if you'd like some other names. There's some really nice sages out there, and there's lots of lupin.
I think I like the idea of her being named after Martha, because I feel like that, because Martha's the god of family, and that feels very nice to me, you know.
Yeah. The god Nerul is family, home, like local society, the hearth. That's sort of like the personal family god is Nerul. Martha is like the greater mother. She brings life to everything, and she creates everything, and she heals everything. So they're very similar gods. Nerul is Martha's daughter, and like inherited a lot of her roles and responsibilities. So those are both fantastic names, but just as a little bit of lore.
Martha feels right to me for the mother's
Perfect.
name.
Love it. Mother named Martha. And let's roll some stats for your mother. Would you just roll me 3d6 6 times, and we'll just take those stats.
3d6 6 times. 1, 2. Sorry. Roll. Sorry, I'm having issues.
That's okay.
I swear this never happens. There's a 12, a 13, an 11, an 11, and a 14. Mom's got good stats. 13, 12, 13, 11, 11, 14. Mom's got as good stats as I did, and I rolled with advantage.
1, 2, 3, 4. Wow. Way to go, Mom.
She's like above average.
Yeah. Mom's great. All right. Your father, what do we know about him? What have you been told about him?
Ooh, I ain't been told shit. She just said, in fact, Mother doesn't talk about it.
It doesn't come up.
For respect of her grandfather, or for my grandfather, she never told anyone the actual story. She's like, I don't care. I won't have it scrutinized. You can, criticize me all you want. I know I did the right thing for this family. And No one has
Great.
cared to ask her. It's sort of that kind of a situation. No one's cared to ask her, and she hasn't cared to tell.
Now, was there ever a moment when you, as a child, maybe upon like reaching 18 years old or 21 years old or something like that, like asked her to tell you the story? Did she give you like a little... Did she tell you why she sought out a half-elf? Did she tell you maybe where he was from or where she went? Did she give you any little crumbs to this story yet? Or has it been completely tight-lipped, like, don't ask, I don't want you to know?
I think she would have given me the basic story. After my grandfather passed and I became overseer, maybe I would have asked her maybe every few years, like, Mom, what can you tell me about Dad? Like, who is Dad? Like, everyone else has a dad, like, where's mine? And she kind of brushed me off and said, listen, I'll tell you later. It's just like, kind of like, because there's always servants around or whoever or whatever, and it's like, grandfather doesn't want to hear about this through the back channels, blah, blah, blah. But after, say, grandfather went, she could be a little bit more free.
That makes sense.
And so maybe she told me a few details, like, it was an elf from the Rock Corp woodlands, maybe after the siege.
The siege is still ongoing. So she would have had to get out. If you're 28 years old, then shortly after she left the Elven lands is when the siege would have come up. Like within a couple of years. Yeah.
All right, so she slipped in, got herself convinced an elf, and she was gone a while. Like it took convincing because they didn't want to do it.
Okay.
So I think the basic story is she went to the Rothcorp woodlands in search of an elf and did her best to convince an elf to have a child with her.
Okay. And that's the story that she has told you, is that it took a long time. She had to find someone to be convinced. I know this was against her father's orders. Yeah.
And she's a very straightforward woman, so she didn't go into it like, oh, I'm going to seduce him. She would like walk up to elves and be like, listen, my family needs a half elf. Like she's not trying to manipulate people. She's very straightforward. She's like, listen, my family needs a half elf to guide it through the next, time, because I think humans, we just don't live long enough. Like, so I need you, I need to find an elf to have a half elf son with, or daughter, or whatever, so that we can, have someone who'll inherit our family and guard us through the next century. And then the other elves are like, the actual elves are like, what the fuck is wrong with this human?
And then she found the one who was like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Like, I don't know exactly how that played out, but she was a very straightforward woman. She was like, listen, I need a half elf. I need one.
Got it. So she sounds like a straightforward and strong-willed person. I'm just making character notes so we can play with these. Excellent. Now, do you have any siblings? Did she then take up with a human, and now you also have some human half-siblings? Or are you also an only child?
Ooh, that is a great question. I think it makes sense if at the very least she had an older brother who was a waste of space. Just sometimes they turn out not good, and this is what convinced her that they needed a half elf. Like, this is part of it. She was like, it can't go to this fucking idiot, right? It can't go to this lunatic loser who has never worked a day in his life. He's no good. She had a brother she considered no good. Did she sort of find love afterwards? I think she would have. But again, it was a sort of thing of obligation for her. I don't think she's a particularly romantic woman. And she would have just been like, okay, well, the strong-handed gardener from Drury Lane, he'll do. Give me that one.
Right. And so for her, this is what is she? Why did she marry him? Like, what's the rub here? Is it someone to help her raise her child? Or is it?
I think it was very much so someone to. She found a man who I think she found a widower, a man who had his own children, whose wife had died to maybe a disease, and she was like, "Listen, you can come live in my castle with your kids. You just got to marry me, and we crack out a couple kids of our own, and we'll figure it out." Sort of a deal. Sort of a very straightforward, not exactly loveless, but a sort of more a more practical relationship, right? Like less a world scorching. What's the word? It wasn't a world scorching romance. It wasn't.
Right.
It wasn't a lust-filled novel. It was, listen, I'm single, you're single, we both got kids. It'll be easier if we're together.
Right. Life is difficult to go through alone. You need a partner with you. You got a good head on your shoulders. We both had kids already. Let's just do this thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, and I can see you're struggling. Okay, listen, come live with me. We'll try it out. And it turns out that it worked for him because he was a very practical man too.
Great. What is his name?
His name is. Are there like angels or demons in this world? Like maybe religious angels, demons, that sort of thing. Maybe he has like a religious name.
The demons are less religious. The angels are very, very rare. They're almost never heard from. So they are minor figures in the history, important but minor figures in the history. But they are very, they're definitely connected to the gods. They're certainly like God servants, sort of.
When I say angel, I just mean like some sort of like servant of a deity, sort of like maybe a step above a cleric, like how you have like Gabriel and Oriel and all these,
right?
The whatever. Like, would there be a name like that in your world?
Yeah,
maybe he has like
some demigods that have been around. Devon.
It's something that has like a positive. I don't want it to be named after I don't want it to be named Beelzebub, but something more.
Right.
Like Gabriel, like the angel of the pearly gates or whatever. But like in this universe, he would be named something because I feel like giving people religious names, I think, grounds it in the world. That just feels right to me.
Yeah. Well, let me take a look over here. We could do one of the lesser gods. We could do like Wulmator. He's the god of joy, but that's kind of an awkward name.
Would there be like a short version of that? Like Gabriel sometimes becomes Gabe.
Right.
So would there be like Woman? Would that be like a...
Woman? Yeah, that's perfect.
It sounds a little bit too much like woman. Maybe there's Mator. Maybe he would be called Ator.
Ator. There we go.
Ator. That feels a little bit more like a... It's a reference to Woman Tor, but it's not quite.
Mm-hmm.
So he's a Tor.
A Tor. And he's a very practical man, you said.
He is a green-thumbed farmer, gardener type character.
Okay. Everyone's family has tie-ins to gardeners so far.
Well, I feel like
it's just a good thing. I love gardening. It's one of my two favorite hobbies.
It's a what's the word? It's a pastoral kind of island, right? We don't have heavy industry. People are working the land.
That's right. And he has kids of his own. Now we probably don't need to get too deep into your like half siblings and step siblings and all of that jazz. But just as an idea, does he have like one kid or does he have like 12 kids? Like what's the range here? I think
he's younger than my mother, and he had a young wife who died, maybe on their third child. So he has two. He has a boy and a girl from before he got remarried, and then they have another boy and a girl together. So I have 4 half siblings, 2 men, 2 girls, sort of a thing. I think that's a nice symmetry. Feels okay.
Nice. 2 half siblings and 2 step siblings.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. And each pair is boy, girl, boy, girl.
Exactly.
Perfect. And it sounds like, are they all younger than you, or just your half siblings younger than you, or your step siblings older?
I think my step siblings would have been maybe like, yeah, they would have been like a year or two older than me. So by this point, they've probably gotten married and moved out.
Right. They're probably well into their 30s. They're in the middle of their life or beginning the middle of their life. You are in your late 20s, but because your aging is so much slower, you still look like, 20, 21. You still look quite young. You're still fit. You're not beginning to go.
This evokes weird feelings in Zephyr, because like my step siblings, they've moved out. They're married. They're having kids. They're living their life, and I'm like, well, I'm a half elf. I can't have kids. I'm not married. I've only just become this overseer that I didn't really pick for myself. This is something my mother picked for me. And I've been sort of groomed for this role. I've been brought up to be this thing.
Excellent. Can you roll me stats for your stepfather real quick?
Sure thing. Okay, you did the dashes. So 3d6 for strength. That's a 9. 13 for dex. 8 for con. 9 for int. 14 for wisdom. And a 14 for charisma.
Oh,
so
he's also 2 14s and a 13. This guy, not bad.
that's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, like 998, sure, but I mean, they're not that much below average. He's like,
No, 8 to 13 is your average band. 8 is like the low end of average, and 13 is the high end of average. So he's got 2 above average stats, and what is that? His con is a little bit low. So like, he gets sick more often than other people, or he gets like headaches sometimes, or he's just a little overweight, or maybe a little bit too thin. Somehow his health is just a little bit off, but it's not.
maybe he's just like a slightly more sickly than average, right? Maybe he gets the flu worse, right, every year.
Yeah. When the flu goes around, he always gets it, and he's always out for like 2 weeks. But otherwise, it's fine. Great. Love it. Let's take a look at your weapon and non-weapon proficiencies, because you're an overseer. This stems from the line of commanders. Your grandfather was a commander. It sounds like he's dead now. So you've been gifted a certain amount of like ceremonial weapons and armor that have been passed down through the generations. You're going to have a breastplate, which is kind of heavy. We can deal with it a little bit later. You would have learned some form of fighting. It's very unlikely that your grandfather was a spellcaster, but let me roll for it anyway. Yeah, he's definitely not a spellcaster. Most of the other people, like the wardens, don't really need to be trained with weapons. Like, they get ceremonial weapons and armor, and sometimes they play with them and like learn how to use them, especially when you're a little bit older and you start taking the role a little bit more seriously. The like older, almost retired wardens tend to be the ones who practice a little bit more because they're more into the role. So we're going to give you some weapon proficiencies that would have been taught to you, and let's see about non-weapon here.
I need to pull up your non-weapon proficiency thing.
Yes, I can link it if you can't find it.
I have it. I'm just opening up weapon and non. Thankfully, previous Jamie is very, very smart sometimes, and I made bookmarks for weapons and non-weapon proficiencies.
Well.
Jamie, sometimes previous Jamie's like on it, dude.
I always like previous Jamie better.
Me too.
I'm so sorry.
Always.
That was
and Jamie,
cruel.
it's like sell Jamie coin. It's all downhill, man.
I'd buy Jamie coin right now.
Stop.
So let's get you. I think you are probably one of the more educated people in town. You definitely have this role that's important to you. You're going to be learning the family business of chicken herding and stuff. And I don't want to, undersell chicken herding, but it's probably not the most difficult of all the jobs.
I'm gonna be honest with you. Chickens like herd themselves.
Yeah.
You just like you walk where you don't want them to go, and they run away from you. Like they're not nature's smartest animal. Okay, they're fallen
small,
dinosaurs.
They're easily contained. Yeah.
Like a knee-high fence, and that they're done. Like, you know what I mean?
Let's get you 4 non-weapon proficiencies, and let's get you 3 weapon proficiencies. You will also get. Oh, there we go. That's good.
Okay, sure. I think the non-weapon proficiency that just feels like automatic because of my role as a shepherd is animal handling, right?
I'm sorry. I'm changing your character sheet for just one moment. Okay. It was borked earlier. I think it was borked on Nick's character too. Oh, we need to go back to Nick's character. He gets 3 more non-weapon proficiencies. Okay. Sorry. You get 4 non-weapon proficiencies for your upbringing, and then you get 4 for your high intelligence. So 8 non-weapon proficiencies total, and 3 weapon proficiencies.
Damn.
It's a lot.
I gotta start rolling higher on int, man. Jesus.
Yeah. And considering your role, we're going to say that you have crossover with the warrior proficiency list, I think. Well, I think it should be rogue? Is that where we should... Let me check, because depending on your class, which you're not starting with the class, some weapon proficiencies are a little bit more expensive, and I just want to make sure that you're getting a set of proficiencies that it makes sense that you would get.
Sure. I'll start doing like the general ones, like animal handling. I think is everyone, right?
Yeah. I think we're gonna give you the rogue list of proficiencies, which is, if you're looking at the sheet, anything with an X in the row column is the one you can get at the listed cost, and anything outside of that rogue section after line 62 takes an additional slot to take up, except for literacy. We're going to say literacy is within your realm as well, because you're a leader of the town, and you should probably take that.
Literacy. Which one is... I don't see literacy. Ah, there it is. Okay, literacy. I will take literacy. That's gonna be 1, right?
Yep.
Perfect. I'll adjust all the stats. Literacy is not an ability, so I will just say strength. Fine.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You'll never roll it. There is no literacy
if
check.
I find a particularly difficult book, you know, how good am I at reading my emails? Click. Not 20. We nailed it.
All right. That is 2 slots.
So
far, out of 8.
Out of your thoughts, I would like to hear your thoughts. What do you think, using your experience as DM, what suggestions might you make for me, knowing my character's role?
Yeah, well, I would
see
take...
you hovering over etiquette and history.
Etiquette and history are go-tos for someone in your position.
Okay. And would it be local history?
I think you would definitely have local history.
I feel like I would have ancient history too, considering my role.
I think your role would want to have ancient history, but I think the issue is that a lot of information has been lost, and it's all just kind of like rumors and local lore now. Also, your local history is so focused on this one concept of like protecting the fortress that I think there's a weird overlap here.
Where it's like, it's local history, but it's also ancient here.
Yeah. The local history is this ancient legacy that you're protecting. So, 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
So I've taken animal handling, literacy, etiquette, and history local. Those all feel like those are things my character would grow up doing. Now I'm trying to think what would fit who he is as a person.
Tell me about her.
Or fit who she is. Sorry. I think Zephyr is someone who feels the weight of responsibility, and so relishes their time that they can steal alone. You know, like they there's been a lot of expectations of them. So I kind of imagine them as not particularly wanting to be the center of attention when they don't have to be, right?
So we need to get
but
you
there
a
also might be
hobby.
an edge of self-importance there too. It's like, I am the overseer. Maybe a little bit of
Right.
that, you know, like I have to do this.
Got it. Well,
so I
let's
think in
get you
terms of-
a hobby, like maybe pottery or what's the woodworking one here? Bowery, fletchery, singing, dancing, cooking, baking. What is something that you could do that would be like a solo activity that you could like get away from town and kind of enjoy on your own?
Reading feels very much so like in the right direction, but I have literacy, so
And books are hard to come by. They're very expensive. They decay pretty easily. Our modern paper is amazing, you know.
what is the what's the water like in the lake? Is it safe to swim in? Because I feel like
Yeah.
she might be the kind of person who like goes off and is like, "Oh, I'm going for a swim," you know, like
Yeah.
because like the island is probably just filled with people. The only place you can go to kind of be alone is you can't go for a walk because everyone you walk by is going to ask you or talk to you. So but if you go for a swim, there's no one out there.
The island is like 9 miles long and 3 miles across, so it's like an oblong shape with a mountain ridge that goes across the back of it. We would call it like a hill. You know, the English would call it a mountain because they don't know what a real mountain is. But you know, it's got some like steep sides to it, so you could forgive them. I'm sorry, 6 miles across, or no, 4 miles the thin way, 9 miles the long way, 20 miles in diameter if you want to walk all the way around it.
Yeah,
so
I
swimming
think-
is a great tool. You can swim in the lake. There are fish. There are the occasional dangerous thing as well, but like there's sharks in the ocean and people swim in the ocean all the time, you know?
Yeah, I think she would take swimming and fishing. Like, her way of getting away from it all is to go out into the wilderness, right? Well,
Excellent.
not necessarily wilderness, but just to get away from people. Like, just go swimming, catch a couple fish, maybe cook it over a campfire. Is there like a fire making?
There is.
Yeah, there is a fire building. I'll take,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, fire building probably isn't a particularly useful one, but I feel like it fits the character.
Yeah, and just so you know, fire building allows you to start wood even when like you're in a bad situation where there's a lot of wet wood around. Like if it's been raining, someone with a fire building proficiency can still get a fire going.
Perfect. So, actually, surprisingly useful.
Yeah.
So she's the kind of character who, not exactly, like she's not marginalized because she's been thrust into this role, but she self-marginalizes a little bit. Like she longs for the return to the wilderness. She longs for the elven forests because she's kind of halfway in this human world, halfway out of this human world. So I think this feels right to me. That
Great.
and now I want to make a pick that is like meta. Okay, what's a good skill? Do you think? What's one that comes up and is really useful but people underestimate?
Well, one that comes up all the time that's super useful to have is either rope use or tumbling, but those are not underestimated. They are well valued and they are common meta picks. If you want,
That sounds boring. Like, I really liked Omen reading back in Save or Die. That was a good one.
okay.
Like, I want something a little out there, but could be still really good.
Then you might want to take boating or seamanship, because it doesn't come up very often. But if you ever do run into a boat, players are always like, cool, we found a boat, let's go. And I'm like, you have no idea how to sail a ship. Like, your character has found a boat, but like, that's if I gave you a tank and told you to drive a tank 1,000 miles. Like, you wouldn't, or I gave you like an airplane and told you to fly an airplane, you wouldn't know how to fly an airplane. Like, they are specialized skills. Boating is more small things that are like river vessels, and seamanship is larger things that go over the ocean.
Yeah, I think seamanship feels maybe too much, but boating for a lake liver seems right. Because maybe I have to take the boat out to visit. I don't know. Are there other towns on these islands, or is this the only town?
There are probably some other villages. Yours is the largest of them. There are probably some other villages nearby, and there are going to be some villages that are like on the lake shore that you could get to.
But my character's never been on the sea, so I don't think seamanship feels right. But boating definitely feels useful. I'll take boating.
Perfect.
All right, beautiful. Fishing is going to get us food. Fire building is going to keep us warm.
Boating is intelligence. I've already adjusted your things for the stats that they need, so you don't need to do any of that. Let's talk weapons. You get 3 because you are the grandchild of the current overseer, and he would have given you some extra special attention. So ceremonially, swords are the common weapon of overseers. You could do bow. Bow is 2 weapon slots, so it's pretty hard to get. But you could do bow. You could also do a weapon slot for like a proper weapon, and then a fighting style that might give you like a flat buff, but not give you more weapons. Yeah. What are we thinking?
I like the idea of sword. I think it just feels natural. If that's like the ceremonial, like noble characters, you use a sword.
Yeah.
Sure. True warriors all know that you use a spear, but
spear.
nobles,
Yeah.
they wave a metal stick around and call themselves a hero.
Right. You could also take spear if you want. That is a great skill. I love the spear as a weapon.
Do I get the 2d4?
If you use it in 2 hands.
Otherwise it's 1d6, right?
I'm double checking for reference. Spear.
I kind of like the idea of a bow, but it takes 2 slots.
It does take 2 slots. It's a lot harder to learn how to use a bow than it is to learn how to use a sword. You got to build up certain muscles in your body. It takes a lot of practice to hold with that draw, so it takes 2 slots.
Would I be carrying around a shield at proficiency?
You do not need a shield proficiency. It would be available to you. It would change your shield from +2 AC to +3 AC.
D&D 2E. Trying to remember. I had a wiki that I was using to help me.
Or from 1 to 3.
Wait, from 1 AC to 3?
The default rules have shields be 1 AC, and then if you have a proficiency bonus, it goes to 3. But the default rules also make you... It only works on the first number, X number of attacks per round, and it's way too much to track. I honestly think shield should be 2 AC normal, and then proficient should be 3. So let's go with 2 to 3. That just way makes more sense.
Let me have a little think. Let me think. Weapon proficiency. This is always where I kind of wish I had the books, because it's always nice to be able to look at them.
Yeah. Well, we should get you a copy of the books.
We should. I wonder, they're not in print?
They're not. You have to get them off eBay these days.
Weapon proficiencies. I have a wiki that I use because it has like some of the rules.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Come on.
The ones that you're going to be looking at are either like melee weapon style, which gives you, if you don't have a shield, if you just have your weapon, it'll give you a +1 bonus to AC. If you have 2 of these, it gives you a +2 bonus to AC. The missile weapon style allows you to shoot and scoot instead of you can take a half move and get your full volley off, or you can take a full move and get half your volley instead of normally it's a half move for half volley. Wait,
I really want to do. One day I want to do an archer, but I don't, because of this character's role. It doesn't feel like an archer.
You can get the 2-handed weapon style, which changes your weapon speed. But since we're not going to be using speed for initiative, it would increase your 2-handed +1 damage to using a 2-handed weapon. But then you wouldn't be using arming sword; you'd be using 2-handed sword. But we could do that. There's the 2 weapons style. Normally, when you dual wield, it's a penalty with one hand for one hand and a major penalty for the other hand. But with the 2 weapon style, it goes down. You use that in Renatus Fur, I believe, though.
It was very fun.
Mm-hmm. We could do it again if you want.
I'm having a think. Sorry, I know this is taking a while, but I'm having
it's
a
all
little.
right, man. That's why we do
I'm having a little think.
a nice full session for character creation.
So, with the kind of overseer, it's harkening back to the history of this role, okay? Would the overseer be seen with like a sword at their side and an arm free, like to point and command and tell people what to do? Would they fight with? They wouldn't carry a shield, or would they have a shield strapped to their arm, like historically, right?
If you're going into a full-fledged battle where you expect to be fighting people yourself, you definitely carry a shield. But 99 times out of 100, you're in more of just a leadership position, and you don't need to carry the shield around. It's kind of worthless, and now you have a hand free to point. Especially since no one has come, doing it. Like, the island hasn't been attacked in like 1,000 years or something. So a shield has probably fallen by the wayside. That you haven't had to defend the fortress from enemies in a long time. I think a shield proficiency probably doesn't make a ton of sense.
That's what I'm thinking. Is like I think I want to take it, but I don't know if it makes sense for the character. Like, would he have been trained to use a shield? Would she have been trained to use a shield? You
could pick that up if you're taking this job super seriously. If you're like, I am the overseer here, and like all of my wardens are part-time people who are only like taking this job sort of lightly. There needs to be at least one serious warrior in the group. It would make total sense for you to pick that up, but it would say something about your character. Okay.
Yeah,
nice.
Like she takes the role that she's been given seriously.
Excellent.
Because it's all she really has to hold on to. Like, she can't have a family. She can't. There's a lot of things that are denied her because of her status and role, right? And the one thing she can do is be really good at her job. So that's arming sword and shield. I'm trying to think I would love to take bow, but unfortunately it's 2.
It's 2. You could take 1 slot in bow right now, and then when you hit level 3 or 4 or whatever it is, get the 2nd slot.
What about are there is there like a sword and shield fighting style?
There is. It's a little crunchy on the rules, but let me walk you through it anyway. So normally when you're using a weapon and shield, like if you want to do something with your shield, all of a sudden it's considered like dual wielding, and then you also don't get the AC bonus from your shield. Like if you're going to use your shield as a weapon that round and punch someone, you're forgoing its defensive use for that round. But if you have the weapon in a shield fighting style, you don't forfeit the AC bonus.
If I were to shove someone with my shield.
Right, you still get the AC bonus for the round, instead of losing it for the round.
Okay, and what is the advantage of shoving someone with a shield? Like, what does that get me?
If you normally just want to push someone, you have to step into their attack range, and so you provoke an opportunity attack. I think we've been allowing shields to push without provoking opportunity attacks. I think is how I've been doing it, but it's not like spelled out in the rules anywhere. Yeah. So weapon and shield. I'm
going to take the weapon and shield fighting style because it says like you can also do shield punches and shield rush.
These are all.
Do you know what a shield rush is?
Yeah, this is where you're trying to knock someone down with your shield. Yeah. So this would allow you to do that without taking the 2-weapon fighting style penalties for combat, or the offhand penalties for combat. A shield rush, I'm going to call out the specific rules here, is an attempt to knock someone down by running into them with your shield. You need at least 10 feet of space, running room to make an effective shield rush. If you want to knock them prone, if you just want to push them back, you don't need it. When you make it you make an attack against the enemy's AC. It takes your normal attack, and when you hit your mark, they make an opposed strength roll against you and see if you knock them down. There are penalties or bonuses applied for sizes and a number of legs and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, cool. It says you can also do style specialization.
Yeah, that is the...
That's like if I invest another point, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that quite well.
So like I take weapon and shield fighting style, and then I use another point later to take weapon and shield fighting style specialization.
I No, I think you are taking... Weapon and shield is the fighting style specialization that you're taking.
Oh, cool. This is CFH, which is the Complete Fighter's Handbook, I think.
Oh, you're looking at the Complete Fighter's Handbook. Okay, the Complete Fighter's Handbook gets a little bit more messy. I've generally ignored those rules because, like, once you start opening up the Complete Whatever's Handbooks, there's a lot, and it throws the game out of balance. But like we did with the Rogue one, I'm interested and open into hearing what that is. Tell me while I go get my Fighter's Handbook.
So if you have the weapon and shield style specialization, you can make an extra attack every round, but it's a shield punch or a parry. That's it.
Okay, so you would be taking extra proficiency to make a shield punch or a parry with your shield. It's an extra attack, but it would still be a dual wielding attack, which would give you -2 to your main hand, -4 to your offhand. Wait, no, that doesn't make sense. How does this work?
I don't know.
What page did you say? What page number was it?
It was Weapon and Shield style of the Complete Fighter's Handbook. It's page... It doesn't say page here. It just says... It's part of the combat rules expansion.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I sidetracked you there a little.
That's right. We got an arming sword proficiency. We have a shield proficiency. Let's pick another weapon. Would you also know how to use a mace or a dagger or a spear or a javelin?
Oh, no. I'm happy to take weapon and shield fighting style. I just wanted to know what I could do with it. Yeah. That's why I was like trying to look and see.
Got it. Perfect. All right, so we've got your non-weapons. We've got your weapons. I'm going to assign you some gear here. You've got clothes, which, includes boots and everything, so weighs about 5 pounds all told. You should not be severely encumbered. What's going on here? I don't know. It's fine now.
My weight allowance looks low.
55 pounds before being encumbered is correct. 170 max carry. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's not that strong, apparently.
Well, in the modern era, because this is an old game, in the modern era, we've become quite accustomed to our characters not being slowed down until they are carrying ridiculous amounts of weight. Second edition Dungeons & Dragons tries to bring things down to a more realistic situation where you might slow down at lower strengths, and that gives advantages to people who are like unarmored running around. So like if you're fighting someone with a shield which is heavy and armor which is heavy, they're probably moving at like half or 3/4 speed, and then if you don't have armor on, you can just run away from them. In the modern era, we've decided we don't like playing like that usually, but we are still playing with this older game system. Still, with your clothes and armor, you're not encumbered, which is nice. You also have an arming sword, not an arming sword, which weighs, I think, 3 pounds. You have a shield, which weighs a lot. You are still not encumbered. Okay. Once we get you your backpack on, though, you will be slightly encumbered. But that's fine. Backpack weighs 1.5 pounds. Excellent. I don't think we've actually done gear for anyone else. But let me double check. Here. Yeah, MrMouton is also encumbered as well. And Riven doesn't have gear yet. That's fine. Cool.
Lightly encumbered is fine, because you're still 8 speed, right?
8 speed. Yeah, it's fine. It's totally fine. Most adventurers should be lightly encumbered.
Yeah.
Great. I'll fill out your... Oh, HP. We're going to roll a 1d8. We must have at least 50% of max HP, so please roll me a d4 plus 4, because we do not accept rolls lower than that right now.
Okay, 1d4 plus 4?
Yep.
6.
Excellent. All right.
Sorry, we got sidetracked on the skills part.
That's all right. Any of these things take some time. Shield. Perfect. Arming sword, 1d8. Slashing speed. We're not going to be using speed, but I'm going to fill it out anyway. 6 max over here. Lovely, lovely. All right, so I think we've got Zephyr. Is there anything that you want to go back and change? Is there anything after having built out the character that you think might be better to tinker with on the back end? You want to change race, gender, height, weight, any skills, any backstory pieces?
No, I think I've built a character that I like, and I think I've built a character that'll be interesting, and I think it'll be a character that'll be interesting to interact with, and I think we have some interesting story hooks. I'm very, very happy with this character.
Good. Well, why don't we take our break right here? We're going to come back in a few minutes, probably pretty instantly for you watching, and then we're going to do a little bit of role-playing where we kind of get like a day in the life of Zephyr before these big calamitous events that change your life for all time happen.
Perfect. Love it. Can't wait.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. We're going to do a little bit more backstory before we hop into our segments here. So I got a good question for you here. Zephyr. What's your dating life like?
Ooh.
Have you been dating? Have you tried? Have you given up? What's your personal relationships with other people your age like?
That's
brackets.
a great question. I think it comes down to Zephyr is a woman. What does the dating culture look like in Annara? Because I think how things are is gonna like influence like what is the romance that she has been exposed to in her life, right? Because we learn from the society that we exist in.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a village town of 1,200 people, about. So that means there's like 600 adults, 300 elders, 300 youth at any given time. Considering that these are mostly humans, and let's say they die out at 70. That means there's like 17 people roundabouts in any given age. So in your dating pool, there's probably like 100 plus people. That said, 100 plus people is not a lot. And if you're not bisexual, you got to cut that in half. So like you could have dated everyone in your dating pool, especially if you have like lower age ranges. Or you could have dated none of them. There's nothing like outlandish here. There's people that have good marriages and people who have bad marriages and people who are single forever and people who are single by choice and people who are single because they're an asshole and no one wants to be with them or they're just weird. It's aside from this special floating fortress deal, it's a pretty normal village with its problems and its strengths. You've got your taverns and your drunks, and you've got your, promising young children who are gifted at everything and capable, and the whole world is going to rest upon their shoulders, and everyone loves them, and that sort of stuff.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I think what feels right for Zephyr is because she is, she would have been. Is there sort of a school on the island where people children would go to?
Ooh, do we have a centralized education
handled? Is there socialized education? Is there?
It is non-centralized. Everyone is educated by their families, by their parents, by their aunts and uncles, cousins, grandparents. No central formalized schooling.
Okay, and how then would how would Zephyr bump into people her age? Because if I'm seeing that there's very little opportunities for Zephyr to have sort of natural interactions with people her age, and she has been given this sort of position of importance, right? A lot of the interactions that she probably had would have been sort of ships passing in the night, like one-sided affairs where it's like a guy comes up to her and tries to talk to her, or a girl comes up to her and tries to talk to her, and she just doesn't get what's happening because she's not very well socialized in that sphere. Right.
So,
and they're like, "Hey, do you want to go hang out down by the lake?" And she's like, "Either why? I got sword practice to do," or she's like, "Yeah, totally." And then they try to hold her hand, and she's like, "What are you doing?"
So the first thing to say is that there's still lots of like communal get-togethers. All the adults might get together for this thing or that thing. The whole village gets together for certain festivals and rituals and that sort of stuff. And when all the adults get together, as in any social situation, they shove all the kids into a corner and all the kids get to play. So you don't meet kids at school, but you're meeting people, you know, every weekend when the adults get together and you're going with them. You're seeing people for all these big festivals and things. You're also actively working. Like child labor is a thing. It is happening.
I love child labor. Oh,
you know,
send the
you'll
children
be
to the
selling
mines.
you'll be selling meats. You'll be working with your parents while they're doing whatever business transactions they've got going on. Especially since your grandfather was the overseer, like he would go and pay people visits, sort of like an old-timey priest might like go visit this family for dinner this week and go visit that family for dinner on Wednesday and blah blah blah. Like you would go around and meet with people and probably like hear a bit of conversation, but then like go off and play with other kids. And also like indoors in this time and place kind of sucks. Like it's way too dark and it's too cold and too drafty. And you would never spend time just like in your house during the day because there's nothing to do there and it's less comfortable than the outside. And so people just tend to be, and it's a smallish village where everyone knows each other. And so people just tend to like live life out on the street. Like you wouldn't hang at home in your living room reading a book. You would like go sit on the street reading a book and then you'd say hi to people as they come and pass by. So you just have a lot more like
interaction.
Yeah, the society is just built a lot more for people to be bumping into each other all the time.
Okay, yeah, no, totally. I just want to get like a picture of like the life that Zephyr lives, and so it kind of makes sense to me now that Zephyr will have tried dating, but I think the really big question is like, why is Zephyr dating? Is she dating for romance? She can't date for procreation, right? That's not an option that's available for her.
But how
like,
many
of course,
young people date to find a husband or wife, like or a father or mother for their future children? Like people date because you got these urges and they need to be met.
Well, that's the question. Does Zephyr have those urges? And the other question is,
100%.
a lot of people. Well, it depends on how strong Zephyr feels the need to fulfill those urges, right?
Oh, sure. I just meant like half elves don't. They're sterile, but they're not like. It's not that they don't have a sex drive.
They're not by default asexual.
Right.
So I'm just kind of exploring these ideas of the character of like, okay, what would Zephyr's romantic and sexual sort of development maybe look like? And to me, it feels like Zephyr. It's kind of a hot and cold relationship with relationships because there is this I want to find someone, because like everybody wants to find someone who is their person, right? I feel like that's something that most people can identify with. Like, I want to find the person who's for me. Like, you know, the idea of true love exists in the human mind for a reason, right? People are like, oh, this star-studded passion that screams across the universe. But also some people are like, I want to find the person for tonight. And some people are like, I want to find just someone I vibe with. And some people, everyone kind of exists in these different places. And I think Zephyr has felt all of those feelings, has felt like, I wish I could find someone who was for me. I also, you know, that farm boy from the Johnson family got really big forearms, and that just does something to my brain, and I can't explain what it is. So I think she has explored a little bit, but mostly platonically, not very many sexual experiences, partially because of just a personal fear of getting attached to people who she'll watch die from age. But that's something that's in her head. Like, she's thinking, fuck, like if I get too close, but she denies herself. You know, like, I can't, like, it's this sort of like, I'm hungry, but I can't eat this food because it'll make me sick. It's that kind of like relationship with romance and sexuality, right? It's this.
So you meet someone, you like them, you're interested in them, you get to know them, and then as you start to feel yourself like actually growing really attached, you begin to push away.
Yes, exactly. There's this sort of And then she gets frustrated with herself and tries to go back to them, but then they're hurt and they move on, and then they're having kids, and it's just this cycle of frustration.
Okay, so she does make friends. She does fall in love, but that's like scary to her, and so she runs from it. Is what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
100%. That's exactly it.
Got it. So dated around. Let me actually make notes of this. Dated around, but is intentionally staying away from people.
Totally. There was that one guy, okay?
Yeah.
There was this one guy, okay?
He was up front that he didn't want to form a relationship, and that was just a really useful space to be in.
But it was different, and he was like, she just felt safe with him and was cool, and it was nice. But he wasn't asking for anything more. And he wasn't like trying to build a future. He was just like, let's go fucking fishing, bro. You know, like it was really chill. And she liked him a lot. But he's gone off now, and you know, maybe he left the island or he did something else with his life.
He's just gone now. Okay. So we're gonna say you have fallen in love,
but nothing ever stuck.
But nothing stuck. Pushed it away and nothing ever stuck. So you are on your own with no perfect. And you are 28, we said?
Yep.
This is perfect because Mr. Moon's character is 22 and he rolled really nice stats. And he's the smith's son, and so his character position is that he's like just things have come naturally easy to him. He's excelled at everything, and because he's the son of the smith and he's going to inherit like this prestigious role in town, like he's dated a lot, and people have come after and tried to date him, but like he just never really connected with anyone, and he does want to find someone, but like nothing here is his interest, and so he's dated like all of the age appropriate women in his town. And has never found anyone. But he's 22, you're 28. It seems like maybe you guys missed each other, or you could have had I don't want to like create a dating romance between the two of you without Mr. Mooton having been here. But
maybe there could be something there that could develop. Who knows?
We'll see.
Maybe
we'll see.
Maybe Zephyr, you know, the Smith's got strong arms, and that's her thing. Like a man with strong arms just gets her.
Right. Great.
She likes guys who are slightly taller than her with, you know, broad shoulders.
Well, he's 6'5", so...
Damn. Okay.
That's a foot and 2 inches taller than you. A lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to handle all in one package, if you know what I mean. So,
Jesus.
Let's go on to our role-playing section of the game here. I want to talk about a moment, a time between you and your grandfather when... Okay, sorry. I want to talk about what it was like when you were either being trained by him or when you were being instructed or when some knowledge of being an overseer was passed down to you. Because this is an important role that you're being given, but Jamie the human who's playing Zephyr the character doesn't actually know everything there is to know about the town and the island and the role. So let's have a little moment where you're working with him and you can, you know, ask questions about how an overseer might work and he can give you some instruction on what that's like. So let's take this to one of your earlier moments. Like maybe let's start with when you were first, maybe not your very first training day, but at one of these early times when you were still learning this position. So you were taught
I think it would have been like sometime after my mother's brother finally did something that got him. It was like, you're not fit to be overseer, and it would have been like that child. And he, like the grandfather's like talking to him now, points at me and says, that child has more overseer in their little pinky than you have in your whole body, Ronald, or whatever the son's name is. And so it would have been like, say, maybe a couple of weeks or months after that, and there's a little bit of a There's an heir.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's pick this up. Are we going with Ronald for your uncle's name?
Let's call him Malk.
Malk. Uncle Malk.
Gross name. Uncle Malk. He's
named after
drunkard.
Malchus?
Yes.
Maybe? Okay.
I like giving people god names. I don't know why. It just feels good.
Great. So, you were probably around because the grandpa had to point at you to be like, that child is blah, 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 blah. But you weren't necessarily the part of that conversation. You might have overheard bits and pieces. But one day, maybe a month later, the dust has settled. Your grandfather's made some real decisions after thinking on it for a little while. And he will have approached your mother without telling you, being like, hey, this is what's going to happen with your kid. And your mom is probably thrilled by it based on her character backstory. So one day, your grandpa is going to bring you to the local temple, the local church. And I think this is probably not too terribly long ago, actually. Maybe when you were in your late teens or very early 20s, somewhere in like the 18 to 22-year-old section. You've been trained as an overseer because, it's a family position and you can't just have one overseer. You need like a couple of apprentices in case someone dies from whatever calamity. There needs to be someone to fill the role. And then, you need the heir and the spare, as they say.
Yep.
So you were the spare, it sounds like. And you were brought into the temple one day. And your grandfather is going to sit you down. What's this man's name?
Grandfather's name. I don't think. Did we get it? Did we give him a name?
Didn't. No, we need one.
I don't know why, but the name Franz? No. Trying to think of like
Hans.
a good
Grandpa Hans.
a nice
Grandpa
imperial.
Gruber.
So, listen, Die Hard. Jesus. We'll call him
Aurelius, Augustus. No, those are from last
Frodo.
campaign.
No.
Domitian.
We'll call him. What's like a grandfatherly name? Has real sort of gravitas, like an old name, like a kind of like a Francis, grandfather
Teddy,
Francis,
Theodore.
Theodore. Theodore is a great name. Theodore,
right. Theodore. Excellent. And he's dead now. Before the campaign starts.
Dead boy.
Fantastic. Grandfather Theodore, Grandfather Shepherd, Grandpa, Gramps, whatever it is that you call this man by, brings you into the temple and tells you to come up to the altar where the six main gods are: Malchus, Martha, Astaire, Verassi, Tempos, Nadinus. And their little statues are. And he has you kneel down on the praying rug with him and say some silent prayers. And Grandpa does weird stuff from time to time. He's very paternal, patriarchal in the older sense, where you're like the leader of your family and you're overseeing and watching over your family to make sure they're safe. Paternal would be another good word for it. And he'll say to you, Zephyr, I think
Yes, Papa.
know your uncle Malk is a troublesome man, and the role that
Diplomats
we
say trouble,
shepherds,
grandfather.
sometimes being a good shepherd, a good overseer, requires being a good diplomat, and your uncle is troubled. Too troubled to ever take on my responsibilities. That has been obvious for some time, but in my heart of hearts, I always thought my eldest child would take my position, and have recently come to terms that he cannot do that. Your mother, lovely woman that she is too tempestuous, too hard-headed, unwilling to bend and take the advice and counsel of others. It is to you, Zephyr, that the role of overseer shall pass. I want you to pray with me, and I want you to swear an oath before the gods this very day that you will always protect the floating fortress from all who would use it for... Wait, what is... Sorry, I had a phrase. I had a specific phrase that I wrote down. Shit. Way to break the roleplay, Neil.
Misuse it, would abuse it, would besmirch it.
Yes. You must... please... pray with me and make an oath to all the gods that you will protect the fortress from those who would misuse it.
I hear his words, and I feel a sort of youthful idealism in me that I want to swear this. This is something I want. I want this responsibility. I've trained hard. I've worked hard, and it's the sort of idealism of youth.
Mm-hmm.
It's in my heart, and I don't think about it too hard. But I you know, to Zephyr, this is just like, yeah, this is the good and right thing to do. I'm a good person. I swear to protect this island. I swear to protect its people. I swear to protect the fortress. And so Zephyr kneels and does as her grandfather says, and says, I will swear it, grandfather.
He pulls out a small knife, maybe 5 inches long or so, and hands it over to you, hilt first, and which is, you know, a symbolic gesture that you should make a cut across your palm and make a, you know, this is a time for a blood oath here. He hands you the dagger and extends his open palm to show you that you should do this on your own. He looks you dead in the eyes and say, this is a sacred oath in front of the 6 greatest gods. This is not something you can ever break in your life. Do you understand, Zephyr? This will follow you to the end of your days. You may have to skip your own... You will have to find a person worthy of this responsibility when your time comes to an end. You will have to know when to pass this on. Don't hold on to it until you are too old to move it. A lot to consider here. This will be your destiny, your fate. Take a moment, gather your thoughts, and when you're ready, the words will find you.
I'll pause for a moment and consider, and a decent amount of time passes. And I'll say, who else could do this? I don't really have a choice, do I have, grandfather?
Your younger brother and sister, given time, could be made ready to take on this role. If you think that they are better suited for this than you are, it is your responsibility to turn this down. Do you think your younger brother and sister are the right choice?
No.
He nods slowly.
Some time will pass, and the blade will shake in my hand as I hold my other hand out and prepare to cut it. And then there's a sort of moment where my hand goes steady, when the decision is made and the words come to me. And I feel the weight and the pressure. I have to do this. But I know that I can do it, because I've watched my grandfather do it for years. And so there is uncertainty, but there's also perhaps youthful a youthful confidence, like a brashness in my thoughts here, and perhaps over enthusiastically, I place the blade in my hand, and I pull it, and I say, "I swear to protect the people of the floating fortress and its secrets with my very life." And then I pull the blade across my hand, probably a little too enthusiastically, and the blood comes.
It spills over your hand. It falls onto the prayer rug beneath you. Your grandfather pulls out a handkerchief from his breast pocket, because he's a classy older gentleman, and hands it to you to mop up the blood. Probably. I don't know. Let's roll his hotness right now. Grandpa hotness is 3. Not Silver Fox.
God, triple natural 1. Jesus.
Yeah. But his charisma is 12. He's a likable fellow, but, cursed by cheese is what we call this man.
I think, you know what he is? He's a Rizzler. He is attractive despite his physical appearance. He keeps himself well, so he might not outwardly have the sort of countenance that you might be like, oh, this is like a really attractive gentleman. But because he's well kept, because he stays fit, because he has all these other things going, the social class, etc., he's like, he's like that.
He's the William Dafoe of grandfathers.
Yes, he's kind of a, when people are like, when people on Twitter are like, hear me out, and then they post a picture of someone. The people of the village are like, hear me out about Theodore.
I know his eyes are too big and too wide set,
but hear me out, man.
Don't let the buck teeth and the underbite, ruin your impression of this guy. That long tongue is useful for something.
Listen, there's something about the way he wears silks. I can't explain it. Just Theodore, okay? I think about him. Okay, so he gives me a handkerchief. I clasp it in my hand, and it becomes blood-stained. And I kind of don't think I fully understand I think I understand the gravitas of the oath that I just swore, but maybe I don't.
You usually don't understand them until much, much later. Yeah. Okay.
So the oath I swore was to protect the floating fortress. Let me write that down. Protect the floating fortress and its people. Sworn before the 6 gods? Okay. I want to have that in my notes in case I human time later.
Right. They happen. They definitely happen.
It happens, dude.
Yeah. Okay. Your grandfather sits with you. He waits for you to, staunch the bleeding as best as you can, but a wound that big will probably bleed for a few hours. He lets you gather your thoughts. He watches you sort of process these things. And then he'll say, tell me what you know of the role of overseer, and I will help guide you so that one day you will be ready for this.
I know that you're here to protect us. That the wardens answer to you in their duties. I know that the ruins that litter our land were once fortifications that you would have managed and maintained. And I know that most important is that you keep secrets.
Here is the greatest secret of all. Almost all knowledge of the fortress has been completely lost. I, like the overseer before me and the overseer before them and before them, have tried to maintain a semblance of an appearance of knowledge. The truth is, we are just as lost as everyone else. When the skies erupted and the seas invaded the lands, when Ferodia was torn into strife and farmland failed, we lost almost everything that we knew. Even before then, it had been a millennia and a half since the fortress flew. And much has changed. There is nothing in this world that has lasted as long as our tradition and ritual of protecting this greatest power, this most awesome tool. And there are many who would kill to get their hands on it. And when I say kill, I mean there are people who would destroy this village and everyone in it if they thought it might help even slightly to find this fortress. These days we keep our secrets and we protect what lies beneath based on the notion that there is nothing more to be found, that these are old legends that have been lost and mean nothing. Clerics have come, wizards have come, mages of all shapes and sizes have come, and no one has found it. Where it is, I do not know. Some say it lives beneath the sea, some say it lives in the lake, some say it's beneath our feet, others say it is plane shifted in this place waiting to be brought back. I don't know. I don't know how to call it. I don't know where the door is. I don't know what the keys look like. But the fortress has a main entrance, and it has a key that is needed to open it. It was used by the great Archmage Malchus. It was left here, parked here, and then never used again. And the great Mage Malchus, Ferris, disappeared, vanished from history.
Is he dead?
Maybe. He may be dead. He may be on another plane. He may be is trapped in stasis. He may have left his roles but proceeds to walk across this land, an immortal, ageless being. He may have teleported forward in time.
What if he returns? What should I do?
First thing you must do is be sure this is the great mage Ferris. I don't know how one would do that. Wizards can take many forms, many shapes, many voices. Whatever tools, whatever secrets lay in this fortress that we might have been able to use as an acid test have been lost. So you'll have to find your own way.
If it was truly him, Grandfather, he wouldn't need my help, would he?
Well, he entrusted the first Archmage with the key to the fortress. And if he gave the key away, I suspect that means he did not have it. The key was given to someone to protect. It may be sealed even to him.
I see.
Perhaps. Or he may have multiple keys. This is what I say, what I mean.
We
We have lost all knowledge of this thing that we protect.
This isn't what I expected.
It is less glamorous on the inside than it appears from the outside. The truth, my granddaughter, is that like every other person in this village, I am flying by the seat of my pants. I am making it up as I go along, and I'm doing my best to keep this place safe from others. When the bannerless army, the Empire of Arasi arrived, they brought with them clerics, ogres, giants, who came here to find the fortress. And my response to them was, welcome. You may search around. We have not found anything. We think these legends are just that, legends. And sure, the ogres ripped apart our house. The clerics stole the town coffers. But they found nothing. They cast their spells. They dug in the earth. They searched the waters. And then they left and did not come back. Hopefully,
but you kept the people safe.
We kept the people safe. We didn't try to resist with force. We used what we had at our beck and call. And thankfully, it's been a long time. And I think all the secrets that could be discovered have been discovered.
If I can't guard secrets, then I'll guard the people who might know them. Keep them safe.
Now,
protect the traditions.
Yes. Yes.
I understand.
Now, this hasn't happened in a long, long time. But a few hundred years ago, the overseer then was under the impression that we would be better suited knowing more about the past. She went on a journey overseas. She left and first went east to Arcadia to see what she could uncover about the ancient Farron Empire, hoping that clues to the Empire's past, or knowing about the Empire's past, might lead to clues about the nature of the great Archmage Ferris, which might help her understand how best to defend this unseen thing that we guard. She was gone for many years, and when she returned with some knowledge. She talked about the shape of the Empire, how one land after another came under the fold. She found some other legends that we had forgotten that spoke about the fortress and its ability to carry with it entire fleets and move entire armies. The same text was very epic in scale. It talked about the 1,000,000 soldiers who fought and died for a strip of land. I think these ancient texts exaggerate. When they say move entire armies, I ask myself what the size of an army is. When I say it moves entire fleets, I ask myself if it's a fleet of ships or a fleet of carriages. I ask myself how one could carry a boat.
Perhaps if Ferris is as strong as the legends say, perhaps 10 men could be an army under his command.
Your grandfather nods. Whenever we deal with myth and legend, we must remember language has changed, and what was a metaphor to someone now becomes something that sounds literal. You might say, I could eat a horse because you're so hungry, but you couldn't literally eat a horse. But if the legend passed down that the great warrior Zephyr was so hungry she ate a horse, people might learn to believe that as true. So anytime you hear a story, a legend, a rumor that comes your way, always check it against reality.
Of course.
Good.
Even men tell tall tales, grandfather. You know about when the drink gets flowing and people brag, tell stories that are impossible. Like, we all know where you live. Like, there's no way you've gone and fought a dragon or something silly or whatever people claim down in the pub.
And then when someone doesn't hear them fully or isn't paying attention, they may take boast for statement.
Absolutely. I remember there was a fracas over one of the Smiths petting someone's cat. Someone misheard it and thought there was infidelity.
Yes. Well, we have all heard the stories of Kittrell and Mary, and I'm certain there is nothing to it.
I've met the cat. It's a lovely cat, orange. I take your meaning, grandfather. Words are not the same as truth.
Yes. And yet, stories are often built on a grain of truth. Your drunken barman who fought a dragon may simply be relieving themselves or embellishing upon a personal struggle. That dragon may be their battle with drink, or the battle with themselves. Lizard. Right. Good. See, this is why I teach you this. I bring this to you instead of your Uncle Malk.
I dare not speak ill of elders in my family, grandfather. Respect is paramount.
Good.
But I will hear your words.
Good. Now, managing wardens is a difficult job. You are here to help guide them. The commanders of past gave orders. We give context, and we remind people of their responsibilities. These wardens do this part-time. They take the job seriously. They work hard, but it is not the whole of their being. It is their Sunday worship, so to speak.
Is there... I guess I think I've heard people say their side hustle?
Yes. But it's good to have people. It's good to have extra hands and extra eyes and extra ears. As you know, we often get visitors. Well, we sometimes get visitors these days that come looking. Sometimes they are straightforward. They arrive on the beach. Other times they arrive on the backside of the island, trying to sneak on, thinking that if we see them coming, that will somehow stop them from the real truth. Sometimes they, once upon a time, maybe 30 years ago, a young apprentice arrived on a boat, invisible on the boat. The boat came, and the boat left. The apprentice stayed on land, hid round the other side of the hill, built himself a hidden cabin in autumn time. Used some branches and some leaves to sort of blend in the building. We didn't notice his presence until the snows thawed. We didn't find his body until a little after that. Frozen. Died of exposure, the poor lad. But there will be those who come and try to sneak around, and they may find something. This young man had begun a tunnel into the mountainside. He did not get very far before he hit stone, but he had tools with him, and stone eventually gave way through his arms and his picks. And inside that cave, we did find something of interest. Nothing that spoke to the fortress itself, but sections of stone, iron ore, not common on this island, that was that worked as lodestones. Very unusual. There's not much more to the story than that, but Still, tunneling inside the mountain revealed lodestones. Lodestones are rare. They're usually found near sources of magical energy, rifts in the cosmos themselves. It might tell us something. So squirrel away any little curiosity, and every now and then come back and look at it together, and keep an eye out for interlopers.
Why are you telling me this? Should I try to find the secrets of the past? What if Ferris needs us? What if we're meant to help him come back?
I meant to tell you this to remind you that your wardens are useful, and if you use them, you might spot hidden places like this. But you ask a good question. With the secrets lost, what if our proper duty is not to hide the fortress, but to free Ferris from it? What if he is somewhere and needs our help? I have struggled with this question. I expect you to find your own answers, but I will tell you what I have found. I could spend all day second-guessing traditions. Or I could accept them for what they are and meet them head-on. I have chosen the latter, but I do not know if I am right.
I understand. As long as the duty is fulfilled, the path that I take is my own.
It will be up to you, hopefully for a very long time, to keep this safe. The last thing, the one thing we can be sure we do not want, is for it to fall in the hands of monsters, of tyrants, of the Varasi Empire. Gods forbid it fall into their hands.
I'll do everything I can to prevent that. It's my...
Good.
It will be my duty.
Good. And last, dear granddaughter, perhaps a more difficult challenge than all. I'd mentioned to you that you will need to prepare an heir and a spare. You will long outlive your heir. So you must make a decision whether to pass it on when they are ready to take it on, or whether to let your heir fall away and pick another one, and another one, and another one. Every 20 or 30 years, you might end up with 10 or 15 heirs over the course of your lifetime. It could be quite difficult. It could be awkward socially. This is not a decision you have to make now, but think upon it. One day, you will hand this responsibility to someone else, and how and when is just as important as who.
Perhaps I could hand it to someone, and if I stay, I'm like an emergency backup.
Perhaps.
You know, give it to someone worthy of it, and if the worst happens and we lose the heir and the spare, there's always me.
Perhaps.
I will think on this.
Okay. Good. That is enough for today. Tomorrow, we will once again revisit your martial training. If you are going to take on this responsibility, there should be at least one capable warrior in the town.
I will do it. Whatever it takes.
Excellent.
I have to.
Excellent. As the two of you get up from your prayer mat and begin to leave, you can see the cleric. There is a cleric in town. A half-elf who maintains the temple, who I did not pick what god they worship. They are a cleric of Astaire, The cleric, the half-elven cleric, waves at you as you get up and go. You can give a wave. There are many half-elves that live in this town. I think we said the population was like 1,200. Maybe, like 10% of that are half-elves. So quite a few.
100, 120-ish.
Yeah, 100-ish, 120-ish, something like that. There's quite a few of them.
A sprinkling.
Yeah,
maybe less
especially
younger ones since the siege.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and considering that half-elves live a long time, like if it's 120 and they're spread out over 280 years, then, there's a couple half-elves here, a couple there. Most of them are well over 100. Most of them are older folks. Yeah. Okay. Well, that will end this little character section. We're going to do another little poking around at your character. So why don't we take another short break, and when we come back, we'll take another look at who we are as Zephyr.
Perfect.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. PotatoMcWhiskey, Jamie, Zephyr, your grandfather is dying. He has an illness. It's not a wound. It can't be healed by magic, not by the clerics that you have here. Whatever it is, it's fatal. He's been dying for a while now. And the clerics have told everyone that today is probably the day. If it's not today, it's tonight or tomorrow morning by some miracle. So everyone gathers round, say their goodbyes. The family, the whole family, your mother, your stepfather, your two younger siblings, your two older siblings, your Uncle Malk, his family, he's probably got one, your grandfather's brothers and cousins, there's a lot. Family spreads out. It intermarries into other families. It's mixed all around. Everyone comes to pay their respects. All the wardens come to pay respects. All the retired wardens come to pay their respects. Passing of an overseer is a big deal. And once everyone has kind of done their march through, that your family has said their goodbyes, your uncle, the great Theodore himself, beckons you, the future overseer, to the bedside. He pulls back the blankets and sheets a little bit to reveal that his arming sword has been laid by his side throughout this whole time while everyone else has been talking to him. It's been resting underneath the blankets next to him. And he weakly motions to the arming sword and says, "Under better circumstances, I would have given this to you already. But I was greedy, and I loved my position, my job, my role. So now it is yours. From tomorrow morning on, you will be overseer."
I don't believe it was greed. You felt the weight of the responsibility, grandfather. I don't want to believe it was greed, but I understand. I'll reach down and I will put my hand on the blade, but I won't quite take it yet.
Mm-hmm. If you have one fault, child, it's that you are willing to believe in the goodness of man too well. Sorry, there's a cat in the wrong spot who's doing bad things.
Cat?
He's just knocked over my Dragon Ball. Yeah. Anyway, sorry to ruin this moment with the cat, but that's life. If you have one fault, child, it's that you believe in the goodness of man. People
I
far
believe
too
in the
much.
goodness of you. I haven't seen a greedy man. I've seen a leader.
Well, there's not much time left. Let me tell you the secrets I know. And let me remind you one last time that anything written down can be stolen, can be scried upon, can be peeked at. The only real secrets are the ones you lock away in your chest, the ones you hide in your skull. And he will whisper to you, quietly, upon his deathbed, little bits that he knows. Little tiny secrets, little clues to the fortress, little rumors, things that he has picked up over his time, things that the people before him have picked up. I'll give a list to you. I'm not going to repeat all of them right now. I also don't want our viewers to know, and I don't want our other players to watch this and know these things. So I'll give you a list. And to everyone watching, it's a really good list of super important things that only Jamie's going to know. He will whisper to you these secrets. When he's done, or when he's too tired to continue, it's hard to tell. He'll lean back and kind of just push you weakly away with his hand, and close his eyes. And Cleric, who's nearby, giving him his, hospice care, will usher you out of the room, telling you that your grandfather had wished to spend his final moments alone with just himself, so that he could greet Varasi, the Grim Reaper, on his own terms and be ready for it.
Okay. I'll spend some time committing the things that he told me to memory, turning them over in my head. I may even, as part of a memory practice, I might write them down on notes and then burn the notes.
Okay. Well, you are now Overseer. You are the keeper of traditions and secrets. Other people have told you how to do things, and they're dead. And it's up to you. You can follow or break these traditions at your will.
I will follow the traditions where they make sense and only break them if I have good cause to, I think is how Zephyr would lead.
All right. Outside the waiting room, outside your grandfather's death room, is the town mayor. And he's a young mayor. Like you, the former mayor has recently died, and he's inherited the role. He's 32. He's a young man. His name is Brommet. He's kind of arrogant. He knows that he's mayor and that this is a role that's handed down through the generations, and it's the closest thing to nobility that this town has. And just like you said, well, I'm the overseer. He's the mayor, right? He does imports, exports. He does diplomacy. He does sort of information gathering from the outside world. He is the bridge between Annara and the outside world in his mind, of course. And so as you come out, he will step up towards you, looking every bit the 32-year-old human, and he'll reach out a hand and say, Overseer?
I'll look down at his hand, and then reach out and take it, and look him in the eyes and say, Mayor, as I greet him with my hand in his.
He shakes it. Well, as the Overseer, you are entitled to the latest information from the world at large. It's my job, part of my duties, to share with you what I've heard.
What have you heard? What do you think is worth retelling?
I have heard from a man from Solemn who claims to be from Valesburg itself. Valebrook itself. Valesburg is a city that we played near in our last campaign. Valebrook is a different city. It's the heart of the Varasi Empire. From a man who claims to be from Valebrook itself. That the man who created Oris was trained by Ferris. The Archmage Ferris.
Who created Boris?
The Empire of Varasi, as you well know, is led by a high cleric, a hunchback with a heavy lisp named Oris, cleric of Varasi. This man, this beast, this mongrel, was said to have been pushed on his path by an evil wizard. The man that I spoke to, who comes from the same city that both this foul cleric rules from, and from which the dark wizard who created him or pushed him down this path is from, was supposed to have been trained by the Archmage Ferris, who has not been seen from or heard from in 3,000 years. I personally don't believe that this dark elf was trained by a mage from 3,000 years ago. Perhaps he has found some of Ferris's spell books or something like that. But the rumor, the story, is that Ferris, some decades ago, century ago, trained this dark mage. And this dark mage pushed Oris to become emperor of this empire. And that, he says, continuing his long-winded story that he doesn't really believe, and that the Empire of Varasi is actively seeking ancient relics from this time and are actively looking into the fortress, among other things. Now that you're overseer, it's your responsibility to handle this.
I see. Even the most outlandish rumors can have some grain of truth in them. That's something my grandfather, it's something Theodore taught me, that even outrageous stories have truth. But I do also find it hard to believe.
The great emperor of the Varasi Empire was trained by an evil wizard who was trained by an ancient wizard is... I mean, it wasn't every foul thing created by an evil wizard at some point or another. Doesn't everything stem back to the ancients? It's what it is.
It's too clean of a story, I agree. I think your theory about the spellbook or knowledge would make more sense. What's the saying? The simplest solution is often the most correct.
He nods. Still, the bit about bannerless army searching for relics of the past, I buy that. He said as the audio broke out. Music stopped. The bit about looking for the fortress, I believe. So we may be visited sometime. Maybe soon, maybe far down the line. What's your plan?
That depends. What's your plan for diplomacy? I assume... we can't fight them. We have no walls. Our fortresses have fallen to dust over this long centuries. But we cannot help them.
Well, not much is true. Goddess Varasi is the bringer of end times. She's close in my heart as we guard this long-lost ancient fortress at the end of days for her. But these people who embrace... these death cultists who embrace slaughter are fools. They are misguided. They are... I don't know, barking up the wrong tree, missing the point?
I think it's far more than that. They have twisted the visage of Varasi into something that it was never meant to be. And under no circumstances can they get even one of our secrets. One of the many secrets that have been handed to me.
You've heard the stories of the things they've done, the siege upon this forest, the burning of others, the mass slaughter, the employment of goblins and orcs as frontline soldiers, and I'll spare you the details. I'm sure you know them, but it's
I'm aware of some of it.
It's a hell of a mess. The last thing I'd want to do is give them any ounce of utility or power.
No, we resist them by helping them and making sure they get nothing.
He nods
Like
a few times.
an unwelcome traveler, they will be welcome, but we will be glad to see they're back.
Well, that's
we'll
news
make
from
sure
overseas.
That they don't feel anything nailed down. Anything new from here?
Nope. Everything is as it is.
Okay. I think the plan will be to use the wardens as much as we can in just observing the activities of the Varasi, these bannerless armies, and instruct our people to do everything we can to not provoke them. We cannot give them a reason to destroy our traditions.
All right. Sounds like good plan. Same plan. Same plan that's worked for 1,000 years.
Probably not a good idea to start innovating on the first day of the job.
Well, maybe not the first day, but you got to start thinking for yourselves at some point.
Give me some time.
All right. Well,
I need
Overseer,
to learn and observe.
if you need any help, anything that might be involving your duties, come on by, and I'll be happy as mayor to do my part.
The same to you. Same to you, Bromit. It was a pleasure making your acquaintance officially. I hope our working relationship will be fruitful and utilitarian for the people of this island.
All right. I'll leave you with your family. They're giving me dirty looks. I should probably get going. Have a nice, well, I would say have a nice day, but I'm sorry for your loss.
I'll have a day. There'll be nice days that'll come.
Okay. And with that, he'll leave. And your grandfather will pass that night. And come morning, when breakfast is made and plated before you, you have the choice of where to sit at the breakfast table, in your usual spot, beside your mother, or at the head of the table, which is plated and served and is with an empty seat.
I think I'll go to my usual spot beside my mother, but I won't sit there. I'll just lay a hand on her shoulder as a sort of like, hey, I don't get to sit beside you anymore, and then I'll go sit at the head of the table.
Right.
And would grandfather, what would grandfather have done in the mornings? Is there like would he have led a prayer before the meal? Would he have given people an update? Would he have directed the conversation, or would he have just sat quietly and eaten his breakfast and listened to people prattling?
He's usually a fairly quiet person. I think he took his job very seriously, and I think it weighed heavily upon him. I wouldn't go so far as to call him depressed as a person, but he could have like a heaviness around him. So he would sit and everyone else would do their things, and he would, watch the conversation unfold, have his words, made sure other people were like in line, like morally speaking.
He
but
would
with
have
that
been
sense of like,
maybe
go ahead.
laconic and terse, sort of a man of few words but of much impact.
Yeah. And usually with the contextualization of like, it's a big scary world and there are sharks out to get you, that's sort of like, you can never really let down your guard. You always got to be responsible. You always have to be ready. It's going to be your day, your turn one day to protect the ancient secrets of the world. He never really found a lot of happiness, I think. Didn't really find a lot of joy.
I think for Zephyr, just feeling things out, I think when you're given this responsibility, perhaps before you're really ready for it, the instinct is to emulate what came before, because you're not ready to be yourself. Does that make sense? It's sort of like it's easier to copy what someone has done than to try and make it your own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But it'll feel awkward, but somehow it'll feel less awkward than just being yourself. Does that make sense? Is it because it's like you're playing a role, but it's a role you understand from the outside, so you
try to
play
copy the surface details while you figure out what the inside looks like.
Yeah, because I'm flying by the seat of my pants, like you said. Like I do my best to imitate the energy of my grandfather, but I probably don't do it perfectly. I maybe people can tell that maybe it was maybe I'm not fully ready for this role, and maybe there's a conversation or a whisper or something. Grandfather would have done this, blah blah blah. Maybe, who knows, right? There's this, but maybe people are solidarity and we're quiet and we're just contemplative because things have changed.
Things have changed. Yep. I think it's your siblings who are bringing the food in. I think one of them, possibly multiple of them, are into food preparation and cooking and take on some of the domestic roles here. So once all the food is ready to go, everyone can sit down. And there's sort of a looking to you, not that grandfather would ever have like kicked off meals with some sort of quote or phrase or prayer or something, but there is sort of like a noticing of the changing of the household and who sits where now. And finally your mother says, right, well, there's no point in getting around it. This is different. Zephyr, how would you like to be addressed?
I think when it's just us, when it's just family, Zephyr is fine. But perhaps when we are in front of our charges, the people we protect, Overseer has a better look of it. But when it's just us, as it is now, Zephyr is fine. Thank you for
Zephyr,
bringing
pass
in
the
breakfast.
butter.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing in breakfast. We're bereaved, not on hunger strike. And she reaches it, and I reach out and I grab some bread and pass the butter.
Mm-hmm. Great. I think that'll end our session for today. Good job. It sounds like you've also made an interesting character. How are you feeling? We're so over time here, but I do have one more question for you. How are you feeling about this method of character creation where like you don't know what your class is going to be and you don't know what sort of adventure you're going to go on, so here's just like a person and then... Oh,
I love it.
Yeah?
This feels like a much more natural way to create a character rather than be like, I'm going to be a rogue.
I'm going to have all the rogue backstory. I'm a rogue all up and down my line. Okay.
Because I could be a rogue, right? But maybe I'm a warrior.
We're going to see. We're going to see.
Maybe I'm a cleric. Maybe I'm a paladin. Ooh, do I have the stats for a paladin? Who knows? Who knows?
No, you do not have it. You need 17 charisma for a paladin.
17?
Yeah. Yeah.
17.
Yeah, along
Wait,
with other stats. You need like a
What are you
12
gonna
in
rizz up
strength and
the
11
fucking
in.
god every time you turn undead? What the fudge?
You gotta be charismatic. You gotta be a leader of people in order to be a paladin.
Holy, like a 17?
It's broken.
What's the
It's the
probability of
only.
getting a 17 on 3d6? If you were rolling characters back in the day, there's no way you're ever making a paladin.
Yeah. The probability of a 17 or 18, like at least a 17, is 1.85%.
Oh, and that's on top of others. There's like that's less than one.
There's like a
100
12 and a
paladins.
14 and an 11 that you need, I think. Those are more reasonable, but still, it's some pretty good stats.
Fuck. Could you like that means like if you were playing rules as written, there'd be no paladins.
Yeah,
Like
there's
ever.
there's very few. They're very, very rare. But that's how it was in second edition. Second edition, paladins were supposed to be this ultra rare, ultra good. You have to follow the strict moral code, and if you deviate from this moral code at all, you're completely stripped of your class. And now you're just a fighter who can't specialize forever. And they were really cool, but they had like huge stringent requirements and pressures on them. And I think for most play people, it wasn't super fun unless you're really digging into the like good versus evil concepts and storylines. And you're really digging into like the alignment that this is an evil creature and this is a good person. And that's why we
No, for
changed away
sure.
from that. Yeah,
No,
that's
for
why we
sure.
don't do
But
that paladin anymore.
I like it. I like the rarity. I like that it's interesting, right? That it's hard to become that. No, that's super interesting. I'm curious. I'm feeling like my character is leaning cleric or fighter, but there's no magic involved yet. I mean, there could be like there's the int there to be like a low level spellcaster or like maybe a dual class. Who knows? There could
I mean,
be
you've
some
got good stats all around. 14, 11, 12, 14, 12, 10. You could be almost anything with those stats.
This could be like a I don't know, like a cleric mage. It could be a fighter something, a thief something, a bard. I don't know about bard, but I definitely feel fightery something. Who knows? It could go anywhere. I'm also just kind of I like the idea of just finding out.
All right. Well, that's it. Next week, I think, we are going to have Peachow's character creation, and we're going to see the last member of our party. And then depending on how all of this works out and how all of our back-end production works out, we may do a session where it's the whole party together doing something before the campaign starts, just to like see how the party jives with each other as regular people, since they're all wardens and you're their overseer. Or we may just hop straight into the first session when like the campaign kicks off. So we're going to make that decision later. But we'll see you next week for Peachow's character creation.